Okay. Well, welcome everybody. I think a few more people will probably pop in. Thanks for having me be part of your day today. I'm going to run this PowerPoint. There's going to be some information in here, and we'll just kind of go through it. If you have questions during the presentation, feel free to throw them out into the chat box and or raise your hand, and we'll address it then. Or you can wait, take some notes during the presentation and then wait to the end, and we can discuss those questions that you do have. So the first thing is we're going to talk today about solo agers. Who are solo agers? Solo agers are people who are generally 50 and older. They are single, unmarried, or unpartnered. They generally do not have children or family involved in their daily lives. That can be people who at one time were married and are no longer married now, or are widowed. That can be the case too. There are 16 million people in the United States, actually closer to 17 million, who are solo agers. And right here in Connecticut, we have about 250,000. It's a quarter of a million right here in our state. Now, I'm your speaker for today, and I'm working two screens. So pardon me if I look over to the side. I'm not trying to avoid the audience. I'm just looking at my notes here on the presentation. I'm a marketing professional. That's my background, and a business owner, and recently made a different kind of path. I started to work in this space with solo agers. I'm a baby boomer, towards the end of the baby boomers, and I'm also a solo agers. I'm not married, and I do not have children. So my journey of wondering what's going to happen to me as I get older started to lead me on a path that led me to a new business where I created a website called soloagersconnect.com. And that is it's an informational website that's free for anybody to go to find information, to find resources, to find a curated list of service providers, and also to connect with events. So we want people to meet their tribe, and we want to help get rid of loneliness and isolation. So that's a part of this as well. There's also a Facebook group too to be able to build community. So I'm going to talk today about shifting demographics and what brings us to the point of putting a lens more directly on solo agers. We have a growing older population. We know that more people are living alone. We have a declining birth rate, and childlessness is on the rise. So how do these points converge? So first of all, you don't have to be a data geek. You don't have to look at every point on the charts that I'm going to show you. The remarkable thing here is to look at the trajectory, how that line goes up and up and up. This one here shows us the total number of adults in the US who are age 50 and older, which is a population that I speak to in solo agers, people 50 and older, is 126 million people. Now, what's interesting about this is the chart starts in 1980 and it goes up to now. And the remarkable thing here is just showing you the number of people. Okay, so a larger and larger number of people in our country are 50 and older. At the same time, there's a little bit of attention, more attention, I should say, I'm noticing with news articles on the trend of people living alone. In fact, it was Barron's Monthly, I think, magazine in March, which is a publication for the financial sector. And the entire front page of that said, the rise of solo seniors. So this is telling us that older people are living alone, and that might not be so surprising, but it's really across the board. Okay, with people being able, older people, we'll say 50 and older, living alone. That goes for people a little bit younger too. Everybody wants to move out of the house and be on their own. But you can see this is like a hockey puck. It's just got a trend that just keeps going up like this. And it's an interesting trajectory line, I think, because of all the discussions currently about the affordability of housing. So living alone means carrying all the burdens of either home ownership or renting. And carrying those by yourself. So that kind of brings up a bunch of other, questions. So in the meantime, too, we also have the fertility rates that are dropping. So now, just for the purpose of discussion, we use the term fertility rate, and that refers to, so we have a common discussion, we have a common understanding of point. So women in their childbearing years, if they were to have a certain number of children to keep the population steady, that is the fertility rate. And that is generally 2 or 2.1 children per woman. It's always kind of funny to look at the 0.1 because we don't really know how that would happen, right? But about 2 children per woman. So what we're seeing is that that number is dropping way below 2. And this is not just in the United States. This is a phenomenon that is encompassing the entire planet. So all countries are grappling with this. You'll see two lines on this chart. The bottom one in red is not really so important because that just shows changes in that particular year. So that's going to go up and down and move a little bit. The more compelling line here is the blue line that just is the top line there, where you can see it just goes down and down and down. The dotted line through the center is where we're at today. So you can see how the line goes about halfway down, and then from this point into the future, it continues to drop. So that's a remarkable feature of what's happening right now. So we have more people who are older, more people who will be older, okay, and fewer people being born. There is a trend of one or no children, okay, and there are 92 million adults right now aged 55 and older, and 15 million of them, or nearly 17%, which is pretty close to 20%. That's pretty close to 1 out of 5 people have no children at all. They're childless. Okay. Childlessness is also more common among the younger cohort of older adults. That sounds kind of like a weird term, but when you think of older adults, you have, people in their 70s and 80s and so on. And then you have the younger cohort, which would be people maybe in their 60s, 50s, and maybe even 40s. All right. So in the future, what's going to happen is that as this older band of people are no longer with us, this band of people in their 40s, 50s, 60s who are childless will continue to make up that band of people, and others will be right behind them, other people who are having no children. So what we're going to look at is a growing number of people in our population who are older because we have fewer children. On top of all that, we're living a lot longer. So in the United States, in the years between 1960, which was right before I was born, right up until just before the pandemic, the age span increased 10 years. So people who had an average lifespan of 70 now expect an average lifespan of 80. Now, averages are averages. Some people live longer, others do not. Okay. But what we're seeing is life expectancy in the United States specifically, that's where we are, is projected to rise regardless of age, regardless of race or sex. So now the size of the older population, it's kind of interesting, this statistic here, will grow 50% from 2016, which again was just a little bit before the pandemic, until 2030, which is really soon. And we're seeing an increase of more people surviving to the age of 65. And what that really means is if you get to that point, you are expected to live much longer. So your lifespan will be much longer than that. And a lot of that is due to the fact that we have better medical care and diagnostics and medicines and things like that. And our lifestyle choices and changes, from, moving from maybe working in factories or working in agriculture into a more service-based economy. It's a little different type of dynamic, not as hard on your body, so to speak. So life expectancy, here's another similar chart. Remember the bottom line on the chart is not so remarkable to pay attention to. Again, that's a change happening each year, within that band of time. The blue line on the top is really what's remarkable there. And again, like all of these charts we're seeing, except for the birth rates, we're seeing all these numbers go up. So life expectancy is going up. And it tracks with what I just told you, that people are living 10 years longer on average. So the dotted line down the center is where we're at right now. And then everything to the right of that is where we're going. And that line just continues to go up. So if we're at about 80 years old here now, okay, we are looking at something much older here. This line stops around 86 on this chart, and that's a little past 2070. But one thing that I've been reading more about recently is that children born recently, we'll say in the past 5 years, and children being born today, can expect to live past the age of 100. So that's pretty remarkable. So that blue line, if we were to continue it on, it's just going to continue going up and off the chart the way we have it set up here. Yeah. That's a long time. So let's look at the shifting demographics for this lifespan. So, okay, so we're living longer, and the data is telling us that by 2034, people who are 65 and older, there will be more of them than kids in school from kindergarten through senior year. All right. That's probably going to happen sooner than 9 years because some of the data I've been seeing shows that it's already approaching that, and that people in their mid 50s have already outnumbered children in that age group. So it's a moving number a little bit, but it's pretty remarkable to think about what the world will continue to look like as we live longer and we look around and there are just more older people. So by 2060, nearly 1 in 4 Americans, okay, will be at least 65 years old. Okay. Now, many of you may have heard from AARP statistics that we have 10,000 people every day turning 65. And there's discussion around that as far as how quickly those people are, applying for Social Security funding, what that means financially. It affects a lot of other types of aspects of our society as well. And then eventually those baby boomers, that huge contingent of people will continue to age and age out, and behind them, are others. Okay, but not quite the large population that we saw post World War, which led to baby boomers. Okay. So when we put this all in perspective, so let's say that we have the fertility rates dropping and we have fewer children and more older people. What does that make you think about? How is that going to impact our lives? And here's where I would like to hear from the audience. If you have thoughts about what things will look like as we look at those dynamics, within our society. Any thoughts on that at all? You can throw something in the chat, or if you feel comfortable, you can unmute and just, speak without being on camera. We will need more doctors. Okay. Well, we're going to need more doctors. Well, what happens if we don't have enough students who could even go to medical school? Right. So as we age, yes, we're going to have more medical issues that are going to have to be addressed, but we don't have the population feeding into those medical programs to take care of us. That's a big issue. People will need to work longer. That's an interesting concept because they're already doing that, or they're working part-time as they retire, finding a second job. So it means a longer life. There's an interesting book I read recently called Long Life Learning. And it talks about people living past the age of 100 and preparing for careers that are 70 years long. Okay, well, that's a book you have to read sitting down because that seems amazing, right? So finding ways to continue to learn, to continue to find, meaning. A lot of people are working past retirement age because they need to financially. Many are working because it's a social type of atmosphere, to be able to kind of keep, seeing other people. So beyond those points, some of the things that I see that could impact us are just in our local towns. What's going to happen to, the way that we run services right now? The system that we live in is based on property and state taxes, which fund all the services that we use. So one part is, if you have actually fewer people, could you not have fewer homes, less in property taxes, but less people to be actually staff volunteer fire departments, emergency services, etc. Well, we probably won't need as many people in the education field, but we still do need people going into that. So it's kind of interesting to start thinking about all the different areas that could be impacted by this change in in the age groups of people. So where today we might be seeing, younger people come up the ranks, we might start seeing a continuation of older people staying in their jobs and their professions. Another thing is too that sometimes we encounter a problem like these types of impacts we might have on society, right, in the town we're living, but we might have a technology solution to that. When cars came on the scenes, they got rid of the horse carriages and that made changes. And then roads came in and that connected people and opened up trading and led to some prosperity or more mobility. So little changes, especially technology, can have big impacts on us. So if you're hearing about artificial intelligence, AI, or something called AI agents, or you hear about robotics, I think that we're very likely going to see the impact of that sooner than we think. Self-driving vehicles, if you don't have enough taxi drivers, if you don't have enough delivery people to deliver things to your door, not only will you have self-driving vehicles, which are already out there, but they are growing definitely in numbers. You will probably see something like drones and maybe even robots taking packages and bringing them up to your porch. It sounds like a real sci-fi world, but quite honestly, I think that that's probably going to be a solution that's going to be accelerated by these types of demographic changes that we're seeing that are impacting our world today. So let's shift a little bit and talk about money. Okay, the financial picture of solo agers. A lot of the world seems to be geared towards couples. So whenever I go to business meetings and I hear a financial investor talk about money, they're talking about accumulated wealth that a couple has, the home that they own together, how they might structure gifts for their children, how they might name beneficiaries to their children and grandchildren. And then as a solo ager, I look at that and say, well, gee, that doesn't really apply to me because I don't have a spouse I need to deal with as far as, working out finances. I don't have children or I'll never have grandchildren to worry about leaving my legacy to. So that brings something different into the picture. But also when a couple is together pulling their finances, it's a different road they travel from what a solo ager does or a person who's alone. And again, going back to the beginning of when I started talking about who solo agers are, you can cycle into being a solo ager. There are what we call the gray divorce, okay, and losing a spouse to death. Those things can really change your life, and you can find yourself in a position where you become a solo ager. Okay, so it can be something you can cycle into. So if you might have been used to having two incomes, then maybe there's retirement, maybe then there's now not the other person there, so you find yourself solo. Okay, two people sharing expenses. Okay, couples definitely might have two vehicles, two cell phone bills, and some other separate things, but they are sharing the cost of a mortgage, property taxes, things like investing and saving, they'll be putting money towards that, your utilities, your electric bill, stuff like that. So when you're a solo ager, it's a different story. You're looking at all of that and you're shouldering all of that yourself. So planning is really, really important. And it's important to plan. It's important for everyone to plan and save as early as possible so that you build financial stability later in life. For some people, that's the case, but certainly not for everybody. I call solo agers the invisible spenders because, like I said, the world is geared very much toward couples, and we tend to be a little more invisible. But boy, we have some impact here. So the economic picture is, things like long-term care insurance. I'll talk to a long-term care insurance provider. So yeah, well, that's fine for a couple, but what product do you have for me? Home equity, I mentioned that how two people can over a lifetime perhaps build equity in a home and because they've raised their children there and they stay for a long period of time. It can be the same case for somebody who is alone and does it on their own, but it requires a lot more financing and more careful budgeting as you go through. Financial planning and asset management is more critical for someone who's doing that on one income. Wills, trust, and estates bring up questions about things like, gosh, if I don't have a child, who do I name as a beneficiary? Or who's going to be my power of attorney? Or, who should advocate for me? Should I become incapacitated? Those questions require deeper thought. And a different type of community and friendships or connections to be able to make those decisions comfortably. So solo agers have a pretty whopping big economic contribution in the world, and we should make sure that we pay attention to this. The 50 plus population contributed, just as we went into the pandemic, so it's up to 2020, $43 trillion to the global GDP, $43 trillion. In 2020, the 50 plus population in the United States contributed $45 trillion to that. Okay. And to the global GDP, or 34% of the total. So that's a lot. Now, seniors are actively spending on travel, they're spending on wellness, on home improvements, on technology. And that's, if you're a solo or if you're in a couple, people are spending money for those types of things. Also, tourism. This is interesting because I just did a presentation yesterday on solo travel. Okay. Tourism spending hit $868 billion in 2023. So, solo agers of all different levels and means spend money. We drive cars, we put gas in the cars, we put tires on the cars, we pay for repairs. We go to dinner, we travel, we go to coffee shops, we pay electric bills, we do buy clothing, we do all of those types of things. So we're definitely putting money into the economy, and we are not so invisible, but we sometimes feel like we're invisible. I'm going to segue now to a real important topic that is tough for people. Okay, loneliness and social isolation. Now, loneliness is interesting because we've probably heard some national talk about the loneliness epidemic. Okay, the loneliness epidemic does not only affect people over 50 or 60 or older. Okay, it hits a lot of bands of people in all different ages. In fact, people in their 20s have a very high rate of reporting loneliness. So it's something pervasive in our society. But I will tell you that, people who are over 50 and over 60 and older kind of grew up in an era where we used to interact face to face because we didn't have cell phones. We would generally go out and play in groups of kids. We had higher birth rate, then. So we appreciate the face-to-face and personal connections, which over time are harder and harder to forge. And certainly since the pandemic has been very difficult to get out and meet people. So let's talk about loneliness and isolation. They are different, but they are related. Loneliness, and I like this, I don't like it, but it's a good apt description. Loneliness is the distressing feeling of being alone or separated, a distressing feeling. And social isolation, okay, is the lack of social contacts and having few people to interact with regularly. And you can live alone and not feel lonely. I live alone and I like my independence, and I rarely feel lonely. Okay. But then sometimes I feel socially isolated because I don't have a lot of people or really anybody, well, maybe just a very, very small handful of people who I could call and talk to on the phone. People just want to text or nothing, or somebody to spontaneously call and say, hey, you want to go to dinner? It's harder to do that. It requires more planning. So these are two different sides of kind of the same coin. All right. And so the question is, how do we deal with this when we are facing, loneliness and isolation? So what might cause loneliness and isolation? Okay. Mentioned the, COVID was, something that kind of brought this to the forefront, but I believe truly it was bubbling along because people were becoming more and more disconnected, which is bizarre because we have so much more ways to connect with social media and texting and cell phones and all of this, yet we are farther and farther apart from each other. All right. It's a strange phenomenon and it's not a good one. So, causes of social isolation and loneliness. So, you can lose a spouse or you can lose close loved ones. You can have declining physical abilities, or people around you in your support group or your friends can have declining physical abilities. As we age, many times our mobility declines. Your vision can become impaired. Your hearing can go down. You can develop chronic illnesses. And those together, or one of them, can kind of keep you from going out and engaging with groups. And that can make you stay at home more and become more isolated. Lack of transportation follows into a lot of the declining physical abilities. But there's a point at which you probably will stop driving. Okay. So you have to have a plan in place to say, well, what will I do? How will I get around and get out to places? And then the gradual loss of friends due to death or distance. We probably all have friends who are, married with a grandchild or two, and they say, well, we've decided to move to Colorado or Texas or Pennsylvania to be nearer to our daughter and our grandchildren. So they pick up and they go. And you can try to Zoom, you can try to talk periodically, but it makes it more difficult if that person is no longer local to be able to get together with. So these are just some of the causes of social isolation and loneliness. We don't really have a transportation system that's set up very well to use buses and different things like that. We have it, but they require some digging to find the schedules and to make sure that they work for you. A lot of people who are older do not use their cell phones as much to use things like Uber and Lyft. But those types of services are really important. There are obviously transportation services for people who need them, who do not have good mobility or anything like this. But it requires planning. So as we age, and in order to not be so isolated and lonely as these things happen to us, it's important to make sure that we plan for that. So what I like to do in my talks and presentations when I'm working with folks talking about solo agers and solo aging is to highlight that we can have strategies for staying connected and engaged. And in the chat box, I had put a link, and that is for something called my action items worksheet. That's also something you can find on my website, and that is downloadable. It's free. It's a PDF that helps you kind of work along with what we're talking about now. You don't have to. You can, if you want to, you can download it later and take a look. But it's a worksheet that kind of goes along with these ideas, and it has a column that gives you a suggestion for a way to stay connected and engaged, and then examples of what that might be, and then an action you can take. So first of all, like building a strong social network, that's really important, and it's not so easy. It takes a lot of doing. It takes a lot of commitment to wanting to build that and getting out there. And I tell people it's a lot like back in high school. You have to kiss a lot of frogs to find that prince. You have to try a lot of organizations and groups to find what fits. Okay. So, for example, building a strong social network might be something like attending a social club event. Now, a social club could be even something like you could consider your Rotary, even though it's volunteer. It could be an Elks. It could be there's a German club in Newington near West Hartford that I go to some of their events. You don't have to be a member. You can go to some of the public events. I'm an Elk. They have lots of different opportunities to engage. There is an online site called meetup.com. You can join that and find groups that have all sorts of different interests. If you want to hike, or if you want dinner club, or just a knitting group, whatever it is. You also can find a lot of these types of different ways to connect through your library. And that's very connected to the community. And sometimes senior centers have a whole bunch of different options and choices too. So you can, an action you might take is to go on Meetup and just explore it. Or an action item might be you have a friend, or somebody who's an Elk. So, well, maybe I'll go to a meeting or go to an event and see if it's for me. So that would be something typical. So then you have engaging in community activities, and that can be more like town fundraisers, events that the library has, attending a town meeting even to become more, engaged with that, just to see what's going on. Again, trying on a lot of different types of things. Another thing might be in finding purpose through hobbies, through volunteering, and through lifelong learning. This is very interesting because these are very broad areas. So I took a nice block printing class at the New Britain Museum of American Art. I'm also a member there, and they have a lot of different social activities, but then I get discounts on the gift shop or activities or art classes. And so that was something really nice to kind of look at that and say, gee, I remember I wanted to try to do this, these art, these block print things. So let me go and learn about it. I really enjoyed it. It's a fun hobby, and it's something that maybe I'll do more of in the future. A surprising thing that happened to me in the past year, and I never would have guessed in a million years that I'd be doing this today, but I connected with some kind of women's social group, and somebody put a post out there about a women's pool shooting league, billiards, right? And I used to do a little bit of that in high school and college, but I'm really not good at it. So I thought, oh, what the heck? I used to enjoy it. I'll check it out. Well, not only did I check it out, but I immediately, found myself as a member of the American Pool Association. I was assigned to a ladies' league. So now, a year later, I'm playing in a monthly ladies' league, and I really enjoy it. And I love the ladies on my league. So I see them once a month, and sometimes we get together to practice or play during the month. And then that led to somebody inviting me to play in a Monday night league. It's a Monday mixed league with men and women. And so it gets me out of the house. I have a place to talk with other people. I'm learning a new skill. And these are people I never would have met any other place in my life. So it's a whole new group of people, and I'm really enjoying it. It's taken me by surprise, but you never know what you'll find if you reach out and you start looking. I always mention that the Connecticut State University, CCSU, Central Connecticut, has a continuing education department, and they renamed it professional education. And within that, they have something called Scholars for Life. It's a program that is really worth looking up because they run these really interesting dinner talks. You don't have to go for dinner, dinner's optional, but you can go and you can sign up for it in advance, or if you don't want to do that, you can just go for the lecture. Lecture is free, and it's generally on a really cool and interesting topic. And one of the professors leads that. And you will see a whole room filled with round tables of 8 or 10 people, and they're all older people. And it's something you learn something, you meet other people. It's very enjoyable. I suggest you sign up for the dinner in advance because it's delicious. And then they also, I think they'll be starting this up again if they haven't yet. They have an online community for film. Okay, so a professor will send out the information to say, watch these 2 films, and they're generally films you can either stream for free or you can find through your library, all right, and watch it in advance. And then there's a discussion, and that is an online discussion. So you have opportunities for in-person and online lifelong learning. And there are other universities and places, and AARP has a lot of that as well, different types of learning opportunities. So these are types of things that if you haven't explored them, I encourage you to consider just poking around in there to find something that really appeals to you. And again, you have to try a lot of different things to find the things that really fit your interests. And then using technology, I mentioned Uber and Lyft. I have to say, you do not have to become some kind of coding programmer wizard or high tech specialist in IT, but you do need to, we all need to be proficient and comfortable using our cell phones to text, to read our emails, to communicate with other people, to be able to find information. QR codes were big. They're actually very, very old. They were used in inventory controls, I think, before the 1970s. So they've been around a long time, but during COVID, they kind of popped up. If you wanted to get a menu or something, you had to use your cell phone to take a picture of the QR code to be able to get it. And then hopefully you could even see it on your phone to be able to read it. But I'm going to tell you, technology is not going to stop advancing. It's more rapidly advancing every single day. And it's a bit overwhelming, but you need to be able to get onto a Zoom call. The people here today probably are using cell phones and are computer proficient. But if you have friends who are not, yeah, if you have friends who are not, then you can encourage them. And I know that libraries as well as senior centers offer somebody coming in throughout the month to help with technology. Um, and who can use that. Somebody said their mom's on this; they're excited. My mother, was well into her 80s, and she kept saying, "I want to learn to text. I want to learn to text." So I got her a smartphone, and she was texting. Texting wasn't so good because she had some vision problems, but she was able to. She was searching the internet and using that and loving it. And I thought this is fantastic. It opens up a whole new world to you, and it's something you should get on board with. So I do tell people they really, really should, engage with technology. Don't be afraid of it. It can be your friend, but you also have to be, it's better if you're engaged with technology because you become a more savvy user of it. And so you're not as easily scammed. And there are lots of scams. They're always out there. There's always going to be a bad actor someplace trying to hurt us. So you have to be vigilant in protecting yourself and being aware of that. But none of that is going to go away. So I want to share some positive and healthy positivity and healthy outcomes with you. A study from Harvard revealed aging adults who were most satisfied with their aging and had positive outlooks on how they were aging experienced higher levels of physical activity, better cognitive function, and lower risks of depression, heart disease, diabetes, stroke, and cancer. So being positive makes you more healthy. Being optimistic doesn't just let you live longer, it helps you live a longer quality life. Okay. So optimism is linked to a longer lifespan in women from diverse racial and ethnic groups. And it also leads to better emotional health in older men. And that is from two National Institute of Aging funded studies. And that was a collaborative study by who you see on the screen here. It was published in the Journal of American Geriatric Society. And it was through Harvard, Boston University, Kaiser Permanente, two University of California campuses, and Brown University. So it's well researched. So it's really good to find ways to be positive and optimistic. And that's not always easy every day, is it? So, strategies for cultivating a positive mindset to be optimistic, okay, and healthy is to surround yourself with positivity. Okay, well, what does that mean? Okay, one thing I like to do is when because I work alone, and so I'm often by myself, and sometimes I just need a fresh perspective, or I just get a little inundated with work, and I say, gosh, I need to pick me up. My go-to is a comedy movie. Now, I love to rewatch some certain favorites of mine, like My Cousin Vinny. I love that movie. I always laugh. It never ceases to entertain me. But I find comedy really a good help. Going for a walk is good too, but anything that you can do to release those chemical endorphins and make you happy, they also make you happy. I mean, happy and healthy. Practice gratitude. That's something I've gotten into a habit of doing. I try very much to it's not even trying and working hard at it. It's just being in the right mindset. I get up in the morning and I stay in the moment. I have this huge bowl of coffee, and I watch the sunrise out my front window, and I contemplate my day, usually in a little bit of silence before I turn on, the news, and I review my day, and I think, gosh, I'm so lucky for all the things that I have in my life, and I think about these things, and I think, gosh, I have my health, or I have this or that, and I just start my day calmly in that frame of mind, and I find that when I do that, my whole day goes better. And then I end my day with that too, final thoughts of peace and gratitude. And it's just a nice way to bookend my day. Engaging in physical activities. Maybe you're not ready to join a pickleball league, and that's okay. And if you can only walk to the end of your driveway and back, no problem. Do what you can within how well you can do that. Okay. But do it. Okay. Start moving. Move your body more. Bodies are great machines. They're designed to move around. You'll feel better. Your body will respond. If it's harder to walk upstairs slowly, eventually you do it enough times, you'll gain some strength. Just be careful. Do what's within your ability, and try to be as active as you can. Okay. I do little things like I park really far away when I get groceries or someplace so that I have to walk a little further. I believe that every little piece of that adds up cumulatively. Cultivate hobbies and interests, the purple one here. We talked about a couple of things that I'm involved in, but some of the things that you can do is on that sheet, make a list of things, and you can say, gee, I used to really enjoy doing this. I haven't done that in a while. I wonder if there's some group I can find around here who does that. It could be a knitting group. It could be playing chess. It could be gardening. There are many opportunities, and you're going to find that once you start looking, you're going to find more and more and more. And the cool thing about that is when you engage in a hobby you enjoy, you meet other people that you automatically, right from the beginning, have something in common with a love of whatever that particular hobby is, or that activity, or that art class, whatever, yoga class, Tai Chi, whatever it is. Adopting positive self talk. It's very easy to get trapped into something saying, oh, I'm too old to learn this. I'm too old to do that. It's probably better to say, well, rock climbing is no longer for me, but I think that I could get a walk buddy and walk around the neighborhood twice a week. Okay. So we never have to stop learning. And learning also is something really cool because when you learn new things, you strengthen your brain. A lot of that is tied to preventing dementia. Okay. So the more we can learn and do, the stronger we become. It's a lot like your body. The more you work those muscles, the stronger you become. Doing some of that and finding ways to say, I can do this, or I'm still interested. I still have energy for this and that. And I don't know about anybody else, but I feel perpetually 36 inside, but the numbers are really reversed. I see pictures and say, well, no, I'm not 36 anymore, but I sure feel a lot younger inside. And everybody I talk to says the same thing. So don't be afraid to pursue lots of things that make you happy. That's what life is about. You have one life to go around, do what you want. And then embrace mindfulness practices, very much like I said when I sit in the morning quietly with my cup of coffee, especially on the weekends too. I do it a little differently. I sometimes, often, will put on some very quiet music. I like Mozart and some of that Baroque music, but recently I like to listen to some French cafe music, which is a little, more bouncy. But I'll have it on quiet and I'll sip my coffee and I watch, on the weekends I might sleep a little later. The sun might already be up. But it's about starting that day in mindfulness, how I feel, how the coffee tastes, how it smells, the music, just relaxing to start my day, staying in that moment, not rushing to, oh, I have to do grocery shopping. Oh, I have to clean the house. Oh, I've got to do the laundry. Push that aside and just stay in that moment. It's very hard to do for most people because we live in a society where we're having tens of thousands of disruptions flying at us. If you pick up your cell phone, this is something that irritates me. I go to check the weather on my phone and I don't know, 10 things pop up on the screen. I can't even see what I'm doing. All ads, of course, designed to grab my attention away from what I'm doing. So we have to work a little harder to avoid those disruptions and stay in the moment where you'll find a lot more happiness and joy. So some of the key takeaways I want to share here is that as we see from the data and the demographics and what I'm presenting here is that solo aging, okay, is a growing reality. More of us are aging, we're living longer, and we're living alone. Okay, and that is not going to stop. That's a trend that's going to grow. And ladies, I just want to share this with you that over 80% of women end up alone. So it's always good to plan and be mindful of that and cultivate your hobbies and your community and your friendships. And men should do the same because it's a little harder for them when they're on their own. They don't socialize the way we do. They're not, it's a little harder for them. Okay. So it requires a little more planning and help. Planning and engaging are key to thriving. You have to plan social and other activities to reduce isolation. You can't wait till Saturday or Friday night to say, I have no plans for the weekend. And then the weekend goes by and you've talked to nobody. You've seen nobody and you spent the whole thing alone. And now you're starting to feel pretty depressed by Monday. I suggest on Monday or Tuesday, you reach out to someone and you set some kind of activity for the weekend. And even if that's only something like, hey, let's get up in the morning or, whatever, maybe get up at 10 a.m. You say, how about if we have a coffee chat? I'll call you. We'll have our coffee. We'll sip our coffee and have a nice call. Or you meet at a coffee shop, or you go for a walk, or anything. Maybe there's a concert or an activity in town or something going on. There's always something. You can always find something to do, but set yourself up, plan for that experience. Otherwise, you're going to be right up in the weekend. Because during the week, senior centers are active, the library's open, everything. But senior centers are not necessarily open with activities on the weekend. And I've heard that from a lot of people. They say, well, I don't have anything to do on the weekend because these places are closed. So you have to plan. So planning is very important. And pursue a positive attitude. Remember the self-talk, and it's good for your physical and your mental health. Okay, so you're not too old to do anything really, well, except maybe rock climbing. I'm not going there. I know that. But do what you can within your means. So, embrace your age, plan, and engage with all different activities, meet new people. You'll find them through your hobbies and your interests, and trying to keep a positive spin on everything. Not always easy, I realize that, but it's something that takes a little effort. And I think if you put the effort into it, you definitely will come out with, as a winner in those categories for sure. So I invite you to visit soloagersconnect.com. That's the website that I created for Solo Agers. You will find insights there. Those are articles and blogs. I go out and I research what are we worried about? What questions do we have? And then I write articles there, or I republish articles from other service providers on interesting topics that we care about. And the resources are anything from state, local, and federal sites, anything from veterans information to preventing scams to housing and transportation and all of that, but also lifelong learning and some nonprofit organizations that have different types of programs and everything. And I'm constantly adding to that. So when you go back into different categories, you're going to see more things added. I have a newsletter if you care to sign up for that. And then there's a curated list of service providers. So if you're looking for vetted professionals for certain types of services, you can explore that as well. If you are on Facebook, there's a Facebook community. There are actually two. You have the public Facebook community, Solo Agers Connect. That's for anybody and everybody. And then there's a private group. If you prefer to join the private group, you can have discussions throughout questions and everything in that group. And that's not for everybody in the universe to see. It's only information that stays within that group. So if you are more comfortable with that, that is there too. So that's what I have to offer. Again, it's free to go to the site. I want people to find information and help that they're looking for. There's also a link to something called suggestion box. So if you have suggestions for information you'd like to see added to the resources page, or you have questions, or you have an article subject, you say, gee, I'd like to read an article about this, or can you find out more information about that? Just shoot it off there. It comes right into my email inbox. I'm happy to research it and make it happen. Your feedback helps make this better for all solo agers. So this time I'm going to say thank you for being here today. And if you have any particular questions that you want to either take yourself off mute and ask, or you want to post them in the chat box, I'm happy to address them. I know we have a few things going on in here. Let's see here. Okay. Okay. So I hope so. You're welcome. I hope you found it helpful. Okay. Any questions or feedback or information, just pop it in there. Oh, okay. So we have someone here who's in Charlotte, North Carolina, but grew up in Glastonbury. I have lived in 6 different states, and one of them is South Carolina, but I have friends in Charlotte. So I get down there periodically. And you have drones delivering food now. Okay. So that's interesting because I really think that people are not even aware of how much this is already out there. We have self-driving vehicles and trucks going all over the country delivering stuff. We have drones dropping off food now, probably in major metro areas. It's easier. I'd be very curious, and I'll have to look into this, but Charlotte has a very large international and growing airport and a lot of traffic. And I'm wondering how the drones are working with air traffic, especially if it's in and around the city area, which is pretty close to where it is. It's insane. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's kind of interesting. So when they drop off the food, how do they actually drop it right off on your doorstep, or are you in a house with an individual door that they drop it off in front of? Okay. They deliver in a short radius and are low flying. Okay. I'm curious how that stuff gets delivered to apartment complexes, because you'd have to know it's coming. I'm sure there's a communication method, of course, to our cell phones, to say it's coming now, and you'd probably zip downstairs outside and grab your packages as it comes off the drone. It's kind of a wild thought, isn't it? To think that, even like an Amazon truck could pull up in front of your house and a robot would deliver something to your door. Okay. So this person says my neighbor did a drone delivery and it landed in the grass. Well, better in the grass than I guess on the pavement if it could break, but I'm not sure. I guess that might work for a pizza, but I'm not sure what else will they'll drop. This is pretty wild. I think that it's fun. So thank you for sharing that with me. I have a friend whose daughter lives in Charlotte. I'm going to have to ask him if she's tried any of the drone delivery and how that's worked for them. Well, thank you for being here with me today. And I think we'll probably wrap up now. Visit the website. There's events too that you might find helpful. And I know this is recorded and will be sent out to other people. So, I hope that everybody finds it useful. I'm on a mission to bring information out there and help us get rid of loneliness and isolation, to find our tribe and information that can be helpful. We're in a changing world, so we need to adapt. And I'm happy to help solo agers find their way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you everyone for attending.